I don't know if it was just me, however, I feel like I've lived 5 lives since the beginning of this triple header. How on earth has it only been 3 weeks? But I don't want to sound like I'm hating. This triple header has been fun with the exception of Monaco, and now I am more pumped up than ever for the season. But enough about the irrelevant things. You clicked on this video because you want to talk about the Spain weekend, so let's do that. Spain, of course, had the nuclear bomb of the technical directive where the front wing's flexibility for performance will be removed, and if you're on F1 Twitter, they had you believe that this will massively shake up the grid and stop McLaren's dominance. These guys cited how lots of teams relied on the front wing flexibility, so with its removal, obviously they'll be compromised now. However, you had miserable nothing ever happens pricks like myself telling everybody that this technical directive would not change anything and would just be another pointless thing to happen. We miserable pricks were also reinforced by the other directive in China, which got rid of the rear wing flexibility, and that clearly changed nothing, so why would this one? So who won the battle of unemployed delusion? Who was right and who was wrong? Who forgot to turn off the damn sink before leaving the house? Find out later in the video. Anyways, let's talk about the circuit. The circuit Barcelona-Catalunya is the literal definition of hit or miss. You had the start of Max v Lando in 2024, the boring nothing of 2023, the crash outs of 2022, and Seb and Ferrari having marriage troubles in 2020. However, I will say, ever since this track stopped being the testing circuit, the racing has improved a lot despite the inherent issues with the track. Maybe the FIA are to blame for everything. Anyways, that's enough for the intro. Let us recap the weekend and find the winners and losers from it to round out this amazing triple header. So go join the Discord for chats about the weekends and subscribe if you're new if you hate Real Madrid. So enough yapping, and here is the Spain winners and losers.
See those clouds up in the corner? That's where the rain is coming from.
First order of business is the recap like always, so let's go see what's up. Of course, heading into the weekend, like I said before, was everyone talking about the technical directives and how everything will change for the better in Spain, but come on guys, you cannot sit here and tell me that a simple front wing change will be the reason why McLaren dropped massive pace and suddenly become very beatable. If you really equate McLaren's performance to their front wing, then I'm afraid this sport may not be for you. McLaren are as fast as they are because they have genius engineers and leadership guiding their ship, which leads to their rocket ship of a car being developed. I've said it once, I'll say it again. Even if McLaren lose lots of time here, they'll just bring a new package later on that reestablishes, if not exceed, the time that they have lost. So not to be a pissy redditor, but nothing ever happens, and lower your excitement, people. Anyways, there was also an update with the FIA presidency, and it's not looking too good. Now, I have no clue about how the politics of the FIA work. However, 40 automobile clubs stated their allegiance to the MBS regime and are willing to re-elect him. So if Sainz Sr. really is running, he may need to get in contact with Elon Musk to quote-unquote get new voting machines. Anyways, that's the news of the week, so let's head into the sessions now. It's time, everyone. The day of reckoning. FP1 begins and a couple of seats are filled by different faces. The Haas of Ocon was filled by Ryu Hirakawa and for a time became the best Japanese driver on the grid, and the Williams of Albon was filled by Victor Martins, who got his cheeks clapped a couple hours earlier in F2. The session itself would also be pretty boring, with the only moment being a minor incident between Hamilton and Hadjar. It seems Hadjar is getting to the point where he may betray his master like Bort did to Alonso and Jeddah, since he is starting to hint at Hamilton that he is not safe. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, it was just a minor impeding incident, but can you blame me? The session was boring as hell. However, despite this, I will say, some things do look to be different so far. For starters, it seems that Mercedes were really affected by their directive since they had no balance whatsoever. Ferrari looked fast again and closest to the guys up front. Max definitely seems like more of a threat, and McLaren do look slightly slower. However, do put emphasis on slightly. And also, everything I said could have been complete bullshit. It's FP1, people. For all we know, Mercedes were just trying a weird setup, Ferrari tuned up their engines, Max was just Max, and McLaren were just conservative. Don't read into it, people. Anyways, the session ends with Lando, Max, and Lewis in the top 3. FP2 time, and what did I say, people? Mercedes looked back on it since they were trying a weird setup, since their balance seems to be back in full force. Ferrari seemed to have taken a step back, and of course, McLaren have only got faster. However, data shows that in terms of race pace, things do appear sorta close between all the front teams, so any advantage that can be gained now out through setups and tire wear will be critical. All I'm saying is, this reeks of a McLaren one-stop 10-second victory. Anyways, the session itself was also boring yet again, with the only incident being a gravel moment for Ollie. However, the session did also show us that if there was somebody deeply affected by the directives, it could have been Williams, since they seem horrendously slow and have lost major ground compared to the other teams like Racing Bulls, Alonso, and Gasly. And of course, this happens right when I predict Sainz to be 4th in the weekend. I swear guys, I am not responsible for this. Anyways, that's Friday done and dusted, so let's see how FP3 goes on Saturday before quali that same day. To begin with FP3, it shows us that Lando is apparently on strike and hopes to get the alternative Sector 2 layout. However, other than that, there wasn't much else. So with all the practices finished, it seems the standing is Mercedes as the worst for race pace, followed by Ferrari, then Red Bull, and who would have thought, McLaren as the fastest. Don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so. So now let's move on to qualifying, where it should be very tight. Q1 begins and there is an expectation of a fight for pole, so imagine everyone's faces when Piastri is 2/10 ahead at the top of the timing board. But hey, it's Q1, not Q3. Anyways, it's time for the second runs, and in a brilliant stroke from Flavio to ensure that both of his cars are through, Colapinto coincidentally stalls on pit exit and is the first car lined up, which means everyone behind Franco cannot go. It would have been a brilliant move by Flavio, however, cars were able to squeeze through, so tough luck. Anyways, the session ends with Ocon 17th, Sainz 18th after I had predicted him P4, Colapinto 19th, and who would go slower? Lance Stroll? Nope. Pookie Pornota P20. Red Bull, may the apocalypse strike you first. Q2 time and nothing happens other than the McLaren drivers being separated by hundreds and them ahead of everyone by tenths. So now we are into Q3 and it is ultra tight between the McLaren boys. So who gets pole? The first run sees Russell best of the front runners, while Norris edges out Pastry for provisional pole. Now for the final runs, and with everything on the line, Norris does what he does best, and Pastry gets the pole by a mighty 2/10 over his teammate. A pretty boring qualifying, all things considered, so with nothing more, it is race time, people. Lap 1 begins, and similar to last year, Lando gets his pants pulled down again, this time by Max, who drops down to 3rd, and behind, the two Ferraris move up the grid while the Mercs fall back. Even more behind, you have a 3-car battle between Hülkenberg, Hadjar, and Gasly, and after, things calm down somewhat. Except for Ferrari. For some reason, Fred still hasn't learned his lesson from Miami, since Charles is just wasting away his tires behind Lewis and refusing to let them swap positions before giving the order later on. Speaking of Miami, the front. Max makes a great start, however, he is not in a McLaren, which means the better driver suffers from the evil known as tire wear, so there's nothing he can do when it comes to his defense, since his tires will never compete with McLaren's. So the race does calm down now, with a couple of sweet overtakes in the first stops, and overall, it's just a jolly good old time right now. But someone who hates fun, I guess, is Liam and Alex, since while they were racing, they decided to make contact, which leads to Alex wanting to rage quit from the race. Don't blame him. He also crashes into Behrman later on, so I have no clue what to think of Liam anymore. Anyways, the race will calm down now with little action as strategy takes a forefront in the race, and towards the end of it, Max has a little run on Lando thanks to the quote-unquote drivers ahead of him who are lapped, but Lando ultimately pulls away. Or does he? There is a safety car now thanks to Kimi's car killing itself, and while the McLaren stop for softs, Max gets put on hards. Nice one, Red Bull. So safety car comes in and everyone keeps it calm except for the sports token crybaby. Now, I don't blame Max here because he's been flawless, and if I were put on hards when everybody's on softs, I would crash out too. He gets put off the road by George and is asked to give the place back after overtaking off track, so when he pulls off, he lets George through for like 1 second before hitting him? I don't know anymore. He gets a 10-second pen, so the race ends with Pastry winning from Lando and Charles, with Max in 10th place. Also, Ferrari is 2nd in the standings now. What a race. Alrighty, now it's time for my winners and losers, and as always, losers first, and I start with Yuki Tsunoda. Bro, my oh my. Now let's be real, some part of his weekend is due to his skill, however, you can't fool anyone. Most of his bad results are due to Red Bull, because apparently they put him on the wrong setup in the weekend. I'm gonna vomit. It makes no sense that this driver, who was always in Q3 with Racing Bulls and top 10 in the race before strategy killed him, is now in the bottom 10 fighting Saubers and Alpine. It has nothing to do with Red Bull aura or Red Bull pressure. The car is just horrendous, but I'm sure you know that by now. However, this is still not stopping my Checo agenda. Next up is Sainz, who really had a bad weekend. Guys, I swear I don't curse these guys. I am not responsible for his weekend after I said he'd finish 4th in the weekend. It sucks too because he was on a good run recently, but I don't know, he just couldn't perform this week, especially compared to Albon, who himself didn't exactly have the best weekend. And of course, to rub more salt on the wound, this was his home race, final home race at this track at that, and yeah, had no 1-lap pace, disappointed in race pace. Let's see if he could bounce back. Next up, I have the fans of Formula 1. Yes, you, my sweet child. I have the fans because you all got played and really thought something was gonna change with these directives. Come on, guys, you can't be so gullible. I knew that they wouldn't do a thing since I'm like really smart and never wrong and the #1 reliable, unbiased news source you can trust, so trust me next time. Anyways, come on, guys. China directives changed nothing, so why would these ones? Next up is PM Porson. Since this man still sucks so much, despite Monaco being good for him, maybe that was because no one can overtake, since here, this man is still so sloppy. He crashes with Albon, takes him out. He collides with Behrman for no reason. I mean, dude, maybe he should get dropped. This guy displays poor racecraft week in, week out. I don't even know anymore. He was also much slower than Hadjar this week, so yeah, big loser this week. Finally, I have Franco Colapinto, which if you told me that Dune was never dropped, I would believe it. Look, the bright side is he isn't performing worse than Jack, but he for sure ain't doing shit. Now, I'm still giving him a bit of leeway since he was thrown into a triple header. However, these next races after Spain have to see him doing much better. Franco has shown that he is a driver capable of competing with the established midfield drivers, so he has pace for sure, but does he have that dog in him? Also, it should be worth noting he is in an Alpine, so his mentality already is pretty shot, so let's see how Canada goes for him. Now for the winners, and I of course have McLaren. Well, would you look at the time? You know, actually, you guys were right. Things did change. McLaren just got faster. That car is such a piece of engineering, and it's all thanks to the brilliant minds they have. I've already said what I think of the drivers, and it's just such a shame things are like this. I would kill to see a driver like Max or Charles in that car, but boo-hoo. They will always win thanks to their supreme tire advantage, and there's nothing we could do about it, so good job, I guess. Next up, I have Gasly, who did really well this week. All weekend, he had good pace, which led to 2 brilliant results in the weekend for him. Plus, he saw PSG win, so yeah, I don't really have anything to say, unlike our next driver. Moving on is Hadjar, who was absolutely stellar this week. This is another short one since we know that this guy is good, and guess what? He was good here again. Again, he scored points here and also just showed really good pace, especially when you compare it to Liam's pace. But there is a big issue. He could go to Red Bull soon. I am hoping and praying he doesn't, since I don't want to give him the Yuki treatment and start putting him in losers. So let's hope he could leave Red Bull and go somewhere else soon. Next, I have Sauber. While Nico did have a bad qualifying, he made it up in the race with that brilliant P5 finish and clearly shows he was way more comfortable in the car. And someone who was also definitely happier this week as well was Gabriel Bortoleto. He was great this week and finally had a weekend where I would say I feared him. I feared him because if he can continue to perform like he did most of this weekend, then the implications are massive. If Sauber can improve their green shitbox into a somewhat drivable green car, Gabby could start challenging Hulk consistently and challenging for points, so I am very excited now to see how he and Sauber can improve. Now for the bonus category, and I have the Taurus of the week, and I have Alonso for this one. In qualifying, he got a nice tour of the top 10 before his Aston and Strat team decided that's enough top 10 for him in the weekend. By the way, this bit got screwed by the safety car, so imagine him a winner now. Finally, let's see how my predictions and bingo ended up. My quality predictions were out of order mostly, but I'll take it. My race predictions were absolutely wrong. My random prediction was wrong, surprise surprise. Your predictions were horrible, shame on all of you. And finally, my bingo card still has no updates. Anyways, those are my winners and losers from the Spanish Grand Prix. Overall, I like this weekend and I always have fun with this sport, so no complaints for me. Despite what I think about the technical directives, I'm not against things like this, since if it's for the sake of entertainment and closing gaps, I'm for it. But of course, I do acknowledge the irony with this, since for a sport of innovation, they sure hate innovation. You win some, you lose some. Anyways, I want to give a quick shout out to all members of the flock for their continued support, and make sure you join if you want cool benefits as well as just helping me out. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe since it really helps me out. Make sure to let me know in the comments who your winners and losers are. And as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.